Before we begin, take a moment. Not to think, just to arrive. Let your shoulders drop. Let the noise of the day settle somewhere far away. You don't need to solve anything tonight. You're safe here. This is not a story about danger. It's a story about comfort, about how cities learn to tuck themselves in at night, how they dim the lights, lock the doors, and tell themselves everything will be fine. Gotham does that very well. It whispers to itself, "We survived, we adapted, we're stable now, breathe in." And notice how good that sounds. Stability is a lullaby. It tells you there's nothing left to worry about, that the hard parts are over, that someone else has already taken care of it. Breathe out. Heroes used to sing that lullaby for Gotham. They stood watch while the city slept. They absorbed the fear, the guilt, the questions. And now, they're gone. Not with a scream, not with a fight, just quietly. Like a parent leaving the room once the child has fallen asleep. And the city kept sleeping. That's what this season is about. Not nightmares, not monsters, but the dreams people choose when no one is watching anymore. So listen slowly. There will be no sudden movements here, no shouting, no alarms, just stories, observations, patterns. If something feels uncomfortable, that's okay. Discomfort is just awareness, stretching a little wider than usual. You don't need to judge it. You don't need to fix it. Just notice it. Because this season isn't here to wake Gotham up. It's here to sit beside it while it sleeps and gently ask what kind of world it's dreaming into existence. Rest now. We can begin. Gotham, the False Hero, Season 2, Episode 1, Gotham After the Mask. People keep asking what happened after Batman. As if something ended. That's the first misunderstanding. Nothing ended. The mask didn't fall, it was retired, and retirement is always quieter than defeat. There were no riots when he disappeared from the skyline. No collapse, no sudden moral awakening. Just a brief silence, the kind cities use to check whether anyone is really gone. Then Gotham continued. That's the part no one wants to admit. They expected chaos. They expected crime to explode. They expected proof that Batman had been necessary. Instead, the city adjusted. Private security expanded. Surveillance systems filled the gaps. Authority became procedural. The bat signal went dark and nothing broke. That should worry you, because when a symbol disappears and the system remains intact, it means the symbol was never the foundation. It was the interface. Batman wasn't holding Gotham together. He was making it easier to live with itself. You see, heroes are useful not because they solve problems, but because they delay responsibility. As long as Batman existed, Gotham didn't have to ask itself difficult questions. Why inequality kept reproducing violence? Why Arkham kept filling instead of emptying? Why wealth never seemed to solve what fists could not? Batman absorbed those questions. He turned them into nightly rituals: crime, response, containment, repeat. And repetition feels like progress when no one remembers the starting point. After Batman, that ritual didn't disappear. It professionalized. Fear became data. Risk became metrics. Suspicion became policy. Batman used fear symbolically. The city learned to use it administratively. That's always the next step. Arkham didn't close, it evolved. No more dramatic commitments. No more visible madness. Now, people simply became non-compliant, high risk, behaviorally inconsistent. Language improved, and when language improves, violence becomes acceptable because it no longer looks like violence, it looks like management. People still disappear in Gotham. They just do it quietly now, and quiet feels humane. This is what Gotham calls maturity. They tell Batman's story differently now, not as a warning about crime, as a warning about individuality. What happens when power becomes personal, when force lacks abstraction, when a symbol starts thinking for itself? Batman didn't scare the system because he was violent. He scared it because he hesitated. Hesitation introduces unpredictability. And systems hate unpredictability. They prefer villains. Villains are simple, loud, inefficient. Villains justify expansion. Heroes complicated. That's why Gotham didn't replace Batman with another mask. It replaced him with process, with distance, with neutrality. Neutrality is the most effective form of violence ever invented, because no one feels responsible for it. After the mask, Gotham became smoother, not kinder, not fairer, smoother. Fewer confrontations, more rules, less visible suffering, more invisible despair. People adapted quickly. They always do. Adaptation is praised as resilience, but resilience is not health. It's survival under conditions you no longer believe can change. That belief is the real casualty. People stopped asking for justice. They started asking for stability. Stability is easier to sell. Stability doesn't demand imagination, and imagination is dangerous. Batman represented imagination, the idea that one man could intervene, that something dramatic could interrupt the cycle. When that idea died, the cycle became permanent. This is the Gotham we're in now. A city without heroes and without illusions. That doesn't make it free. It makes it honest. And honesty is uncomfortable. Because now there's no one left to blame. Not a criminal, not a madman, not a vigilante. Just arrangements, contracts, policies, habits. That's what Season 2 is about. Not monsters. Outcomes. Because the villains you're about to hear about weren't created by Batman. They were revealed by his absence. They didn't rise to fight him. They stepped into the space he left behind. And unlike Batman, they don't pretend to save Gotham. They simply operate within it. That makes them more dangerous and more honest. Episode 2. The Penguin. Power without illusion. People like to call him a criminal. That's the first mistake. Criminals believe they are outside the system. They steal from it. They fight it. They try to escape it. Oswald Cobblepot never did. He understood something very early. Gotham doesn't punish power. It only punishes visibility. The Penguin didn't want to be feared. Fear is unstable. He wanted to be necessary. That's much safer. You see, Gotham is not run by ideals. It's run by logistics, supply, demand, leverage. Batman terrified criminals. Penguin employed them. Batman broke operations apart. Penguin reorganized them. That's why they both survived for so long, but only one of them was honest. Penguin never pretended to save Gotham. He never spoke about justice. He never claimed moral authority. He sold what the city already wanted and charged it for the privilege. Weapons, information, protection, silence. People think his clubs were about excess. They weren't. They were about proximity. If you control where people gather, you control what they hear. If you control what they hear, you control what feels possible. Penguin understood this intuitively. While Batman watched rooftops, Penguin watched doors. Who entered? Who was welcomed? Who was turned away? That's real power, not spectacle. Access. And Gotham rewarded him for it. Politicians never shook his hand in public. They didn't need to. Their donors did. Their campaigns did. Their silence did. Penguin wasn't corruption. He was integration. A bridge between crime and legitimacy, so smooth no one noticed when they crossed it. Batman never understood this. He thought removing players changed the game. It doesn't. Games survive players. Rules survive heroes. Penguin didn't resist Batman. He waited him out. Because Batman was loud, temporary, emotional. Penguin was patient. He knew that eventually the city would tire of the drama, that it would prefer predictability over justice, that it would choose stability over confrontation. And when the mask disappeared, Penguin didn't celebrate. He adjusted inventory because the demand didn't vanish. It just changed shape. No bat signal meant no spectacle. No spectacle meant quieter transactions, better margins, cleaner hands. This is the part people avoid admitting. Gotham didn't reject Penguin. It absorbed him. His methods were refined, his violence outsourced, his risk distributed. Penguin became a consultant without a title, a node in a network. That's why he was dangerous. Not because he broke the law, because he understood it. Law is not a barrier, it's a filter. And those who learn how to pass through it become invisible. Batman was never invisible. That's why he had to go. Penguin never needed to wear a mask, because he was already shaped like the city. Bent, compact, adapted. He didn't dream of a better Gotham. Dreams destabilize. He optimized the one that existed. And optimization always wins because it promises improvement without demanding change. People like to ask why Gotham keeps producing men like him. It doesn't. Men like him recognize Gotham early. They stop pretending. Penguin didn't corrupt the city. He listened to it. And the city spoke clearly. It said, "Don't save us, service us." That's why Penguin outlived heroes. That's why he never needed myth. And that's why, in a city without masks, he feels perfectly at home. Episode 3. The Riddler, the Crime of Asking. Why people think Edward Nygma wanted attention. That's the lazy explanation. Attention seekers want to be seen. Edward wanted to be answered. There's a difference. You see, Gotham tolerates crime. It budgets for it, plans around it, manages it. What Gotham does not tolerate are questions that don't stop. Most questions are harmless. They're asked once, answered poorly, then forgotten. Edward never forgot. He noticed patterns, not dramatic ones, boring ones, numbers that repeated, contracts that circulated through the same hands, neighborhoods that never improved, no matter how much money passed through them. He didn't ask who did this. He asked why it kept working. That's when Gotham became uncomfortable, because who can be arrested? Why cannot? Batman never understood Edward. Batman thought riddles were games, distractions, ego. They weren't. They were compression. Edward knew that if he spoke plainly, no one would listen, so he turned explanations into puzzles. Not to be clever, to slow people down, to force them to sit with a thought longer than they wanted to. That was his mistake. Because Gotham hates delays. Delays interrupt flow. Flow is profit. Batman punched criminals. Edward interrupted processes. That made Edward more dangerous. A punch ends a moment. A question lingers. Edward didn't expose secrets. He exposed structures. He showed how donations moved, how zoning changed just in time, how laws arrived exactly when they were needed. He never said, "This is evil." He said, "This is consistent." Consistency implies intent. Intent implies responsibility. And responsibility is the one thing Gotham refuses to claim. So they called him insane? That word is very useful. Insane means you don't have to respond. It means the problem is internal, not structural. Edward wasn't locked away because he was wrong. He was locked away because he was specific. Specificity is destabilizing. Batman delivered him to Arkham because Edward didn't fit any category Batman trusted. He wasn't violent in the right way. He wasn't chaotic. He wasn't visibly cruel. He spoke calmly about uncomfortable things. Batman calls that dangerous. Because Batman believes danger must look like violence. Edward proved otherwise. After Batman disappeared, Edward's questions didn't. They spread, quietly. People began noticing what Edward noticed. Not because they were inspired, because the patterns were already there. Edward simply named them. That's the real function of a riddle. It doesn't hide truth. It forces recognition. And recognition is contagious. That's why Gotham responded the way it always does. It reframed the problem. Not what is he saying, but why is he obsessed? Obsessions are easy to dismiss. Structures are not. Edward became a case study in how to neutralize inquiry. You don't argue with it, you pathologize it. You don't disprove it. You question the mind that noticed it. And once that's done, the system continues untouched. Edward wasn't trying to overthrow Gotham. That's another misunderstanding. Revolutions want outcomes. Edward wanted awareness. Awareness is slower, less satisfying, much harder to stop. Batman never wanted awareness. Awareness complicates action. Batman needed certainty. Edward dismantled certainty one question at a time. That's why Batman could never solve Edward. There was nothing to stop, only something to think about. And thinking is not Batman's strength. Edward's tragedy is not that he failed, it's that he succeeded too early. Gotham wasn't ready to hear itself described accurately, so it did what it always does. It filed him away. Not as a criminal, not as a revolutionary, as a warning. Ask too many questions, and the city will decide something is wrong with you. That's the lesson Edward left behind. Not a riddle, a rule. And rules don't need enforcement once people learn them. Episode 4, Scarecrow, Fear as Governance. People think Jonathan Crane invented fear. That's flattering. Fear doesn't need inventors. It needs organization. Crane understood that very early. Gotham was already afraid long before he arrived. Afraid of crime, afraid of poverty, afraid of becoming irrelevant. What Crane noticed was not fear itself, but how poorly it was being used. Fear was scattered, emotional, inefficient. He didn't want to frighten people. He wanted to standardize them. You see, fear is most powerful when it feels rational, when it wears the costume of concern, when it sounds like safety. Crane wasn't interested in nightmares. Nightmares wake people up. He was interested in low-level anxiety, the kind that hums in the background, the kind that convinces you to comply before you even know you're afraid. Batman used fear theatrically, a symbol, a shadow, a sudden presence. Crane found that crude. Spectacle draws attention. Attention invites resistance. Crane wanted fear that felt reasonable. Fear you could justify to yourself. I'm just being careful. It's better this way. At least nothing happened. That's how fear becomes policy. People like to think Scarecrow was extreme. He wasn't. He was honest. He showed Gotham what it already relied on: warnings, risk assessments, psychological profiles. Crane didn't ask, "What did you do?" He asked, "What might you do?" And once that question is accepted, everything changes. Prevention replaces justice. Prediction replaces evidence. People are no longer judged by actions, but by probabilities. Batman never understood this shift. He believed fear was a tool to deter crime. Crane understood fear was a tool to manage populations. Batman frightened criminals. Crane frightened everyone. Equally, impersonally. That's the difference between intimidation and governance. Fear, when distributed evenly, feels fair, and fairness is how control hides. Crane's experiments weren't about terror, they were about measurement. How much fear makes a person obedient without making them resist? How much uncertainty convinces someone to give up choice voluntarily? That's not madness, that's research. Gotham called him insane because the alternative was admitting he was describing something real. Crane didn't break the system, he revealed its operating system. That's why Arkham became his destination. Not because he was dangerous, because he was precise. After Batman disappeared, Crane's ideas didn't. They matured. Fear became ambient. Cameras replaced shadows, alerts replaced symbols, guidelines replaced threats. No one needed Scarecrow anymore. The city had learned the lesson. You don't need to scare people loudly. You just need to make them uncertain quietly. Uncertainty keeps people compliant. Compliance keeps systems stable, and stable systems are praised even when they suffocate. People will accept almost anything if it arrives wrapped in protection. That's the genius of fear-based governance. It never announces itself as fear. It calls itself care. Batman believed fear was a means to an end. Crane knew fear was the end. Once people are afraid enough to self-regulate, you don't need heroes. You don't need villains. You don't even need laws that are enforced visibly. People police themselves. That's the most efficient outcome. Crane didn't fail. He was surpassed. His methods were absorbed, refined, legalized. That's how Gotham handles uncomfortable innovators. It removes the face and keeps the function. Scarecrow was never the problem. He was the prototype. And prototypes are always discarded once the product ships. Episode 5, Two-Face. Justice that split itself. People say Harvey Dent broke. That's comforting, because if he broke, then the system didn't. But Harvey didn't shatter. He concluded, there's a difference. Harvey Dent believed in the law more than Batman ever did. Batman trusted force. Harvey trusted process. He believed that if the rules were followed carefully enough, justice would eventually emerge. That belief is powerful and extremely fragile, because the law only works if everyone agrees to be bound by it. Harvey discovered something Gotham never wanted to admit. The law doesn't bind power, it negotiates with it. Cases disappeared, evidence softened, witnesses lost credibility at convenient moments. Not dramatically, professionally. No villains in dark rooms, just paperwork that arrived too late. Harvey didn't lose faith because of violence. He lost faith because of consistency. The same names avoided consequences. The same neighborhoods absorbed punishment. The same outcomes repeated. That's not chaos. That's design. People think the coin represents madness. It doesn't. It represents despair. When every option is compromised, randomness feels honest. A coin doesn't pretend. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't accept donations. Harvey didn't flip the coin because he liked chance. He flipped it because the system had removed choice. Batman never understood this. Batman believes the law is flawed but salvageable. Harvey realized it was selective. Selectivity is worse than failure. Failure invites reform. Selectivity preserves itself. Harvey tried to work inside the system longer than anyone. Longer than Batman. Longer than the public. That's why his fall mattered. Not because he became violent, because he stopped pretending. Two-Face isn't chaos. He's the visible consequence of a justice system that split long before he did. One side for those with leverage, one side for those without. Batman fought criminals. Harvey fought outcomes. Batman thought removing bad actors would fix the law. Harvey saw the law producing bad outcomes on its own. That's why Batman had no answer for him. You can punch a criminal. You can't punch a pattern. Gotham called Harvey insane because calling him accurate would have required admitting complicity. Insanity isolates the problem. Accuracy spreads it. After Batman disappeared, Harvey's logic didn't. It became normalized, discretion, prosecutorial flexibility, risk-based sentencing, neutral language for unequal consequences. The coin became unnecessary. The system learned how to do the flipping quietly. That's the cruelest part. Harvey still believed in fairness. He just no longer believed it could be chosen. That's what broke him. Not anger, resignation, two-face forces. Gotham to look at something it hates, that justice is not blind. It looks directly at power and adjusts accordingly. Batman wants to believe justice exists somewhere beneath the corruption. Harvey realized something worse, that corruption is the mechanism. Once you see that, you either walk away or you stop pretending. Harvey stopped pretending. That's why Gotham fears him more than criminals. Criminals violate the law. Harvey exposed it. And exposure is unforgivable. Two-Face wasn't a villain. He was a verdict. Episode 6, Poison Ivy. When nature fights back, people like to call Pamela Isley an extremist. That word does a lot of work. It suggests ideology, obsession, excess. It avoids the harder truth. Pamela didn't radicalize, she responded. Gotham was never built to coexist with anything. Not people, not land, not consequences. It consumes, expands, replaces. Wayne Industries called it development. The city called it progress. Pamela called it irreversible. That was her crime. She understood something Gotham refuses to face. Nature does not negotiate. It does not compromise. It does not accept delays. It reacts. Pamela didn't see herself as a protector of plants. She saw herself as a translator. The environment was already screaming. She just stopped pretending not to hear it. Batman never listened. Batman protects the city. Pamela protects what the city feeds on. That difference matters. Batman fights threats to Gotham. Pamela became a threat because of Gotham. She didn't attack randomly. She targeted supply lines, infrastructure, extraction points. That's why she was labeled a terrorist. Terrorists threaten stability. Pamela threatened sustainability. And sustainability is far more dangerous to power. Gotham tolerates pollution. It tolerates illness. It tolerates displacement. What it does not tolerate is interruption. Pamela interrupted growth. Growth is sacred. Not because it's good, but because it's profitable. People say Ivy chose plants over people. That's dishonest. She chose systems over sentiment. She understood that protecting individuals while destroying the conditions that sustain them is a performance. Pamela didn't want balance. Balance suggests control. She wanted consequence. Consequences are frightening. They can't be negotiated away. Batman believes he prevents harm. Pamela believed harm had already occurred and was still occurring. That's why they could never agree. Batman asks, "How do we stop this?" Pamela asks, "Why was this allowed?" Batman stops visible damage. Pamela exposes cumulative damage that's harder to watch. Gotham prefers disasters because disasters end. Slow collapse never does. That's why Pamela was isolated. Her arguments required time, patience, responsibility. Those are expensive. So Gotham reduced her to a caricature, eco-terrorist, radical, unstable. Once again, language did the violence. After Batman disappeared, Pamela's relevance didn't fade. It increased. Floods, heat, infrastructure failure. The city didn't call her visionary, it called her inconvenient. So it did what it always does. It securitized nature. Green zones with fences, clean districts for profit, containment disguised as preservation. Pamela didn't want a cleaner Gotham. She wanted a humbler one. That's unforgivable, because humility interrupts dominance, and dominance is the city's only real belief. Pamela Isley wasn't fighting humanity. She was reminding it that it is not separate from consequence. Gotham calls that madness. Nature calls it balance. Episode 7. Why I Chose Words. People keep asking why I never tried to replace Batman. That question always sounds sincere. It isn't. What they're really asking is why I didn't choose violence, as if violence is the natural next step once you understand something is broken. It isn't. Violence is what you choose when you still believe someone is listening. I didn't believe that. Long before Masks, long before Arkham, I learned a simple truth about Gotham. Nothing here changes because someone is angry enough. It changes when it becomes inconvenient not to. That's why I never wanted to fight Batman. Batman was honest. He believed force could interrupt the cycle. He believed pain could shock the city into clarity. That belief was naive, but it was sincere. Violence makes noise. Noise attracts attention. Attention invites response. Response is exactly what systems are designed to absorb. Protests get managed, riots get contained, revolutions get aestheticized. Violence is predictable, words are not. Words linger, they settle in places fists never reach. I didn't want to be resisted. I wanted to be remembered. That's a very different ambition. People assume I write because I'm afraid. Afraid to act, afraid to commit. The opposite is true. I write because action is temporary. A punch ends when the body hits the ground. An explanation keeps working long after the noise fades. Batman inspired fear. I wanted to inspire recognition. Recognition is slower, less satisfying, much harder to undo. You can arrest a man. You can't arrest a realization. That's why Arkham exists. Not to heal, to interrupt recognition. Arkham doesn't erase bodies. It delays ideas. I learned that early. I was never locked away because I was dangerous. I was locked away because I was coherent. Coherence is destabilizing. Madness is safe. Madness isolates. Madness reassures the system that the problem is personal. Coherence implies structure. Structure implies responsibility. That's intolerable. Batman delivered people to Arkham because he believed it was containment. He never asked what was being contained. It wasn't chaos. It was explanation. I didn't want to burn Gotham down. That's dramatic. Drama creates heroes. I wanted Gotham to sit with itself, to notice repetition, to recognize patterns it had been trained not to see. That's why I speak calmly. Anger makes dismissal easy. Calm requires engagement. Calm unsettles. People don't know what to do with someone who isn't performing rage. They keep waiting for the outburst. It never comes. That silence is intentional. Silence is where thoughts echo. You see, I'm not tolerated because I'm harmless. I'm tolerated because I'm inconvenient in a manageable way. I don't disrupt logistics. I don't threaten infrastructure. I narrate. And narration is underestimated. They believe stories are passive. They're wrong. Stories teach people what to notice. And what people notice eventually determines what they refuse to accept. That's why this season exists. Not to accuse, not to convert, to describe. I'm not trying to wake Gotham up. That would provoke panic. I'm trying to sit beside it while it insists it's awake and quietly point out what it keeps doing in its sleep. Batman thought the city needed a symbol. I realized it needed a mirror. Mirrors don't fight back. They just wait. That's why I chose words. Because words don't demand permission, they don't expire, they don't bleed, they accumulate. And accumulation is how systems actually change, not through collapse, through discomfort that refuses to go away. That's the kind of danger no mask can absorb. Episode 8, The False Hero. People still talk about Batman as if he's the center of this story. That's understandable. Heroes are easy to focus on. They give shape to complexity. They turn systems into silhouettes. But Batman was never the cause. He was the cover. The false hero. A role Gotham needed so it wouldn't have to confront itself. Batman didn't lie. That's important. He believed what he was doing mattered. He believed intervention was better than neglect. He believed that if he didn't act, things would be worse. And he was right. they would have been louder, messier, harder to ignore. Batman absorbed the noise. That's why Gotham loved him. Every punch he threw was a question no one else had to answer. Every criminal he stopped was a structure left untouched. Every night he went out, the city slept a little easier. Not because it was safer, because responsibility had been outsourced. That's what made him false. Not his intentions, his function. You see, a true hero disrupts power. A false hero stabilizes it. Batman stabilized Gotham by making its problems feel manageable, individual, temporary, solvable through force. He gave the city something to point at so it wouldn't have to look inward. That's why villains kept appearing. Not because Batman failed, because he succeeded. Each villain exposed a part of Gotham the hero couldn't address. Penguin showed power without illusion. Riddler showed truth without permission. Scarecrow showed fear without spectacle. Two-Face showed justice without faith. Ivy showed consequence without mercy. And me? I showed what happens when no one is willing to stop explaining. Batman treated these people as problems. They were messages. And messages don't disappear when you punch the messenger. The city called them villains because villains are easier than reflections. A villain threatens order. A reflection threatens identity. Batman never wanted to be a reflection. He wanted to be an answer. That was his mistake. Answers end conversations. Questions keep them alive. Gotham didn't need an answer. It needed to be confronted with what it kept choosing. Night after night, policy after policy, compromise after compromise, Batman made those choices invisible. That's why his absence changed nothing. The city didn't collapse without him. It normalized, because normalization was always the goal. Batman was the transition, the myth that carried Gotham from chaos to quiet control. Once that transition was complete, the myth could retire, and retirement is the kindest ending a system ever gives its servants. People still ask if Batman could come back. Of course he could. Symbols are recyclable, but he wouldn't matter the same way, because the city no longer needs belief. It has process, it has language, it has justification. Those are far stronger than fear. The tragedy of Batman is not that he failed, it's that he was honest inside a dishonest structure. Honesty there doesn't liberate, it lubricates. He gave everything so the city wouldn't have to give anything up. That's the definition of a false hero. Not someone who pretends to care, someone whose care prevents change. I never wanted to defeat him. Defeat implies opposition. This was never a fight, it was a diagnosis. Batman was the symptom Gotham preferred, because symptoms can be treated without addressing the disease. The disease is comfort, comfort with inequality, comfort with silence, comfort with solutions that don't ask anything of us. Batman made that comfort heroic. That was his greatest achievement and his final service. So no, this season isn't about Batman ending. It's about Gotham continuing without excuses. No masks, no myths, no distractions, just outcomes. And the uncomfortable realization that nothing is stopping the city now except itself. That realization is where heroes are no longer useful, and where stories like this become dangerous. Not because they incite action, but because they remove alibis. That's all I ever wanted, not chaos, clarity. Because once clarity settles in, people can no longer say they didn't know. And knowing is the one burden no hero can carry for you. Before you leave, notice how quiet everything feels. Not peaceful, just Still, that's what clarity often feels like at first. You might be tempted to decide how you feel about what you heard. You don't need to. The mind loves conclusions. They create distance. Instead, notice what stayed with you without asking permission. A thought, a tension, a question you didn't ask. Those are the parts that matter. Nothing here asked you to agree. Nothing demanded action. That's intentional. Because the most effective ideas don't tell you what to do. They change what you can no longer ignore. You'll return to your day now, to routines, to familiar explanations. And most of it will feel the same. But something won't. A small adjustment. A pause where certainty used to be. That's not discomfort. That's awareness learning how to sit quietly. Sleep if you need to. Distract yourself if you want. The city does. But notice how easily comfort returns once someone else names the pattern for you. That's the last thing I'll leave you with. Not a warning, a mirror.